Hello, 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 friends. Nicholas here. DIVO, TED Talks, Devoted Talks, depending on how you want to articulate it. We are devoted to better wellness through modifying and enlivening ancient practices and putting a modern spin on them. Not my best. It's all good. Anyway, so what I wanted to talk about now, and it really ties into the last few episodes I've been talking about with the things being unrevealed until their seasons turn. And it goes back to patterns, right? There are micro patterns all the way through macro patterns and everything in between, some that we cannot easily perceive to ones that are so big that we can't quite comprehend them because it might take a whole lifetime to get to see even one little segment of that greater pattern. And so what I like about the Vedic history and codification is that it didn't just happen overnight. They didn't just write something and they're like, hey, here's what it is. Even before it got to its codified level and written down and memorialized, it took centuries, if not a millennia, or multiple millennia, to come up with it in the first place, based on observing patterns and noting them, and then seeing them repeating through generations rather than just an individual. Right? It's easy for us to see patterns within a day, right? Things that repeat within a 24-hour context, but it may not be as easy in a weekly context, depending on how busy you are. And so sometimes we can't even get a glimpse of the greater pattern because the segment of the pattern that we're in takes time to complete, or it will take more before it can be understood or conceptualized or has a framework from which to understand it. And so I was looking at this pattern over there, and it's a simple repeating pattern over and over and over again. We're using it as a tablecloth to cover up wood that doesn't quite match the decor here, but it's a perfectly good table and has been sitting there anyway. But anyway, the tablecloth has two different styles of triangular shape. Not triangular. It's squares with triangular shapes and patterns embedded within them. So each of those, there's two of them, they have their own unique repetition of pattern within them, and then they themselves are in parallel lines with each other down the fabric. And so it's a very simplistic fabric, but it's easy to discern what the pattern is. Like, it's very easy to look at it very in a glimpse and notice what it is. Now, there are pieces that the woman that made it for me, that she had cut out into letters that spell DIVO. Very sweet of her. Hey, Paige, hope you're listening. And those little individual pieces don't actually reveal a lot about the pattern itself. Like, you might be able to tell looking at all four of them, maybe not, but they are little pieces and segments that have meaning all their own. They spell DIVO. And that's what's important about them, rather than necessarily the fabric, or that it's a piece of this greater fabric. But I would have to look, and have had to look, at those little cutout pieces in conjunction with the longer panels of fabric, or the bigger panels of fabric, to understand that it is a part of that fabric scheme. And so maybe things that are meaningful to you in your life are cutouts and shapes, and or important to be as they are, but the greater pattern that they are a part of in the cosmos, in the world, in life in general, aren't easily discernible to you. You know, I say I'm a patterns person, but I'm a patterns person when it comes to the things that I can notice. And a lot of things that are influence what I notice are habits, are training myself to see them, and traits from childhood. Like, there are certain things that I'm sensitive to because of the household that I was raised in. And that goes for everybody, right? We're very impressionable in our first 7 years of life with regards to absorbing our environment and adapting to our environment. Now, of course, we continue to adapt to our environments all our lives, but oftentimes that 7-year period will influence adaptations hitherto and forth. And so going back to these patterns, sometimes there's complex patterns that can't repeat in any discernible segment of one lifetime, right? Like there's some rotations of the galaxies that are never going to happen in one lifetime. But if you string enough lifetimes together of humans, for instance, or things that can monitor and take note of these things, right? Maybe we create a computer system that can track this over time so that through the generations, the pattern can build itself, and yet the machine that's taking in the information is maintained by those who are living those lifetimes to eventually discern and find this pattern. You know, you could get lost for days and weeks and months and even a lifetime thinking about what exactly that means in the metaphor therein. I actually want to contemplate more on that. I didn't know what I was going to do when I started this. But like I'm staring at this pattern on this box that the computer's sitting on, and it's just honeycombs repeated over and over and over again, and it's cut out to the shape to make the box. And so it's a very simplistic pattern that's easy to discern, and it repeats itself ad nauseum. But that doesn't mean it's any less important. It's just regular and standard, and it's at a level of perception for me that it makes it very easy to glance and know exactly what it is immediately, right? It's retraction on the box, and so it helps us not slip off the box. It serves a great purpose, but the pattern doesn't have to be complex. It just has to be consistent to prevent you from sliding by creating that grit or that friction that steadies the shoe on top of the surface. So what other patterns in your life are you trying to ascribe a simplistic pattern to, but it's a carving or a cutout of that greater pattern? I would say everything is a greater carve-out of everything is a carve-out of the greater pattern, and Ayurveda would agree as well. From the micro to the macro, there is this repetition of guṇas and essences and qualities that come in different forms but still stack upon each other in a way that is repetitive, but at each of the different levels may not look like the other one. Like my mind was blown when it was like Tejas and Pitta and Agni, and they're the same, and yet they're all different. And the difference is within the container or the cutout to which they are a part of. And they serve importance within that cutout, but they're still part of the greater pattern and meaningful or identified within that, but also in that immediate, in that smaller pattern, have an importance and function all their own. And so, hopefully this makes sense. And hopefully you can take from it a reassurance that you're doing the right thing, that your life is headed in the right direction, and that it doesn't necessarily mean that just because it doesn't look like things are going your way, that it isn't part of a pattern that is going to right itself, right? You see things come in threes, and they say history repeats itself, and maybe it does. It seems like it does, but I don't know. Maybe that's just the human nature. But our individual lives don't necessarily have to repeat, but maybe the greater weaving of the pattern, they do. All right, my friends. Hopefully you find understanding and relief and medicine in what we just talked about. Be well, be free.